Hey everybody, this is Emily with Discover Fort Smith. I'm here with Josh from the city of Fort Smith, and we have Ashleigh Buckley here as our guest today. Ashleigh, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so let's just start by talking about how you ended up in Fort Smith.
Well, I guess I grew up in the River Valley, but my husband always is really quick to, point out you're not from Fort Smith, but I actually grew up in Pocola, which is, as a lot of people from here know, just right on the other side of the border. It's where the casino is.
Yeah.
But I grew up in Pocola, so, that's Choctaw Nation, and that is, Oklahoma, but it's so much a part of the River Valley. I think that's what's really cool about Fort Smith is it just encompasses so many other type of communities. And so I grew up there, really. That's where I went to, school, elementary through ninth grade. And, I always kind of joked, I still find myself saying this, but we'll say, oh, I need to go to town. So, I'm one of those people that I need to go to the grocery store or, any kind of store. I'm like, got to go to town. And that's,
I grew up on the outskirts of Tulsa and it was the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, gotta go to town.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
See, we live in Greenwood, so we call Greenwood town and Fort Smith is the city.
Oh, wow.
Got to go into the city.
Yeah.
But so I grew up there, and then we moved into Fort Smith when I was going into high school, and that was a big culture shock. I had 60 kids in my class that I knew my whole life at Pocola, and Pocola was a really great school. But we moved into Fort Smith, and I was really into basketball, and I played basketball at Pocola. Basketball is huge there, by the way. If you don't know about the LaFleur County tournament, it's a really good time.
Yeah.
But it's really big. But we moved into Fort Smith, and my intent was to play basketball, and I was planning to do that. And then I got to Southside, and I thought, oh my gosh, there's so much to do. I can take French, I can take theater, I can do debate, I can be on the journalism staff. It really kind of blew my mind, and my world was just opened up. And I remember telling my parents, like, I don't think I want to play basketball anymore. I don't think I'm good enough to even to play it in college, and I really want to try some other things. And there were honors and AP classes, and so that's really, I just kind of dove in, and it was hard at first because it was just really challenging. I always tell people that's one thing I think Fort Smith really has going for is we have really good schools, especially the high schools. I think are really good. And my husband told me about when he went from high school to college. He said that was really hard, and I said actually I felt the opposite. I felt like Southside was harder than college. Really, I was at the honors school in Fayetteville, but I don't know. I think my AP, if you had Miss Crott for AP English at Southside, then you know what I'm talking about. I felt very prepared for college, and probably more so. So that's really, I'm from the River Valley and kind of claim both sides of it. So.
But then you've moved around, right? From law school and
we went. So I graduated from Southside in 2003, and then I went up to Fayetteville for college. Really big Razorback fan, and so I did it for the football tickets. And then I went to law school there. And then after that, I met my husband in law school, and he had a job in Memphis. And so I kind of followed him, and we lived in Memphis for a couple of years. And then we liked Memphis a lot, but we didn't really care for our jobs at the time, and we wanted to do something different. And I really wanted to be a prosecutor, and I wasn't from Memphis, so that's kind of hard to, get your foot in the door. And then I got an opportunity to come back home and be a prosecutor. And then William got offered a job in the same day. So we just decided it was fate because I think we had applied for jobs all along I-40. And then on the exact same day, we both got offered jobs back here in Fort Smith on the same day. So we thought, well, that's what we're supposed to do. So we did it.
Where's he from?
He's from East Tennessee.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah, he's from, he's kind of near, Knoxville and Chattanooga, kind of in that area. So
you're both lawyers.
Yes.
So who wins arguments in your house?
Oh, definitely me. For sure. I'm the mean one. We practice law together, and I never thought we'd work together.
Yeah.
But one day it just kind of made sense. I was a prosecutor for a while, and then I had our oldest son, Will, and I was an assistant U.S. attorney at the time, and we cover the whole western side of the state in that job. So I was, having to do jury trials in other areas. We have court in Hot Springs and Texarkana. Atlanta and Harrison. And it just didn't seem feasible when I got back from maternity leave to have, a small baby and have to travel so much. And I just couldn't wrap my head around it. And so I just went to him, and he had started his own practice and only been doing it for a year. And I just said, I'm quitting my job and I'm coming to work with you. I just told him because he did it. He quit his job and started his practice. So,
and I'm sure he was like, yes, honey, that sounds great.
Is he pretty easygoing?
He is. Yeah. He's pretty easygoing. He just, he knew he couldn't tell me no. And, but I could see on his face that he thought,
did you lawyer him?
I'm sure she had it all written out. This is the reason why this will work.
Yes. But yeah, so I joined him, and it's funny now. We kind of it's gone really well. We make a really good team. We're kind of a yin and yang. I would say he's good cop, I'm bad cop. So, a lot of people don't guess it, but I can be the mean one.
You're so sweet. Nice.
Oh, well, thanks. Not all the time.
Wait till you see her in the courtroom.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, cool. And so you decided to come back here.
Yeah.
And, your husband came too.
Yeah.
Having not been from here.
Yeah.
So what was it like to come back, and why did you guys choose? I mean, you said you applied to so many places all over the country. Why did you decide to come back here?
Yeah, I think especially when you're young, you move around a lot, you just think, okay, we'll go there next. And you don't really have that sense of, okay, this is where I'm putting down roots. And I don't know that we moved back here thinking this is where we're going to be for the rest of our lives. But, and you also, like I said, it felt like a fate thing. And we just said, well, this is what we're going to do. We're just going to do it. And then we came back, and I felt a little nervous because probably like a lot of, young people, you grow up and you think, oh, I don't want to live in my hometown when I grow up. And I was a little nervous about, what will he think of it? Because he's lived in, other bigger cities too. And he went to college in Cincinnati and, did clerkships in New Orleans and obviously lived in Memphis. And so I was maybe like a little insecure at first. So like, and I wanted to like really try to get him to love it. But the funny thing was he just latched on. And I think really early on, he was, loved it probably maybe a little more than I did. And, I don't think I could ever get him to move even if I wanted to. So he really likes it. But I think for him, because he's such a people person and Fort Smith is such a people-centered place. And so I think that's what I asked him when I was coming here today, I was like, well, what do you really like about Fort Smith? And that's really, what he said too. He's like, I just like the people here.
I think it's easy
to common thread that we hear like on the podcast a lot is just the community aspect of Fort Smith and the people making it a really unique place to be.
Yeah.
And a different.
Yeah. And it doesn't feel impossible to get into circles.
Oh, for sure.
If you want to and you try a little bit, it does require people to try a little bit. But once you try, people are generally accepting. And I love that about this place.
It's not intimidating.
Yeah.
It's very accessible.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very warm.
So what made you want to be a lawyer? Did you see was there a movie or a book or something that was like, yeah, that's what I want to do?
I didn't know what I wanted to do. I always felt like I grew up like really creative and I liked theater. I actually did some of Fort Smith Little Theater, and then I was involved with Southside Drama. So like I said, I went to Southside, and their theater program is so big and it's a really good program. And I always was interested in it, but when I went to Pocola, it was smaller. We didn't even have a theater, not even a facility to do anything. And there was no, program. And so I really liked the creative arts, and not so much of the acting part of it. I like the production part of it, like the behind the scenes. And when I was a kid, I would, I would write little plays and have the kids in the neighborhood perform it. And so I always thought, I might like to do something like that. And so I started off majoring in communications. And then, I just wasn't really sure. And that's kind of intimidating of where do you start, especially, being in Arkansas, not maybe being, somewhere like, New York or California. But, I remember talking to my mom one day and just walking around campus and just saying, I'm just not really sure what I want to do. And it was really her idea, where she said, well, you've always liked to argue, and, why don't you think about law school? And I,
Is that a backhanded compliment?
I know, right? Like only your mother would know.
Mothers know you better than anybody.
Yeah.
And what I really like about practicing law and what I really like about my job. And I found this out once in law school and even in undergrad when I kind of, would take legal classes is there is a creative aspect to it. A lot of people don't think about that, but there's so much creativity and there is an art to it that I really like. We tried jury trials and obviously I was a prosecutor, so I did jury trials and putting together a trial, so much of it is like putting on a performance and not in a disingenuous way, but I have set amount of exhibits and I have to display them to the jury in a certain way. How am I going to do that? Am I going to put it up on a screen? Am I going to print them out and hand it to them? And in what order am I going to call my witnesses? Every element of it is about what is the most effective way to get them to see, our side of the case. And there's just so much that goes into it. And I realized this is kind of like putting on a play and where the props go and what order the line and how I'm going to say it. Whenever I prepare for a jury trial and I'm going to do an opening statement or a closing argument, I rehearse it, very similar to that. I have videoed myself. I like to, I used to always do my closing arguments in front of my dogs before I'd go to court the next day and do it, just and do it for different people. But yeah, I think that's where I kind of really gravitated to it is there is that element there. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about what kind of trials you take, or is that the right way to say that? I don't know.
Yeah.
That is?
Yeah.
Okay.
What kind of cases
that we do.
What kind of cases you
So my husband and I, we have our practice.
Yeah, sorry.
But we...
I think I got to ask the question.
Oh, okay. All right.
I bungled it. So can you talk a little bit about the types of cases that you typically take?
Yeah. So we have our own practice, just me and my husband. It's called the Buckley Firm, and we primarily do injury cases, and often that's car wrecks, but it can be other types of injuries if somebody gets hurt in a facility. But I've also represented people who have been raped or sexually assaulted, and there's a civil liability there where there's somebody at fault. And so it's a big range of, the type of facts of case that we can handle, but we primarily do injury cases. Like I said, I started off, my first job was with a big, huge regional law firm, and I represented big companies. And on the other side of it, with if people were injured, I represented the companies. And that's, it is interesting to I liked seeing I like knowing that I've seen both sides of it, because even when it may have been a big corporation, but a lot of times those are franchise owners. And so those are people who live there in your community. And so I feel like I do have that kind of unique lens of seeing both sides of it. And then
that's useful.
Yeah. And then in criminal, I, obviously was a prosecutor, so it was always criminal cases.
Is there a shortage of attorneys? I mean, I know in the medical field, I hear that often, there's a shortage of nurses or doctors.
I would say in Fort Smith. And so that's my pitch to anybody who's in law school right now or thinking about a legal career is Fort Smith is a fantastic place to come right now because there are two law schools in the state. There's Fayetteville and University of Arkansas, Little Rock. And a lot of people who go there, they kind of establish a community and they want to stay in those places. But Fayetteville and Little Rock, those areas are really oversaturated with attorneys because that's where a lot of people want to stay because they've been going to school there for 3 years. The law school's 3 years. And a lot of people may not think about Fort Smith, but I will say there's really a big kind of turnover in the legal community here in the sense that there are, retiring or and looking to kind of, pass their practices on, or there's positions open. So I would say I think there is a shortage in Fort Smith, and certainly in the outside rural areas there is. Yeah.
That's awesome. So I understand you do a lot outside of just being an attorney. You're a mom. You have two boys, right?
They're wild.
Yeah.
You know one of them.
They're great. They're not wild.
Thanks.
They're great.
A lot of personality.
But you're involved in Fort Kids Children's Museum too. What do you do with Fort Kids, and how's that coming along? What's new in that?
Yeah, I'm the outreach director. So I'm one of the co-founders with, I think you guys have talked with Sarah Strom.
Yes.
She did. I didn't get to be a part of that. I was,
you missed out.
What was I? Was I sick? I can't even remember. So.
Yeah, she's amazing. Get better.
Yeah, I know.
Come on, Josh.
But yeah, there was several of us who we just kind of got together and said, gosh, Fort Smith needs a children's museum. It's not just that we need a place for our kids to play. There's just so much that a children's museum brings to the community. I know you talked about that with her at length, but I'm the outreach director now. So I was the vice president on the board, and then I transitioned into outreach. So I do the education and programming.
Okay.
And we're, trying to, what we say is we've been trying to operate as a museum without walls because we obviously we're fundraising now, and we're doing really well, I feel like, with our fundraising and our capital campaign. We want to build the walls. We want to have the museum built down on the riverfront where we had the land donated to us. But in the meantime, I guess we're all kind of impatient, and we want to start doing the things that we want to do with the museum now. And so that's why we really wanted to do a lot of the outreach events in the meantime. So we've done some here at the library. We do foreign language story times. So I know we've had a French story time. We've also done Spanish. We did Portuguese. One of the members of our board, Marina Hanna, is from Brazil. And so she did a really cool Portuguese story time. And then we have our fort building competition coming up. So if I can plug that too. It's a free event for anybody to come out to the first Fort Chaffee Farmers Market on May 17th. And kids can sign up to be on a team. They can form their teams, or they'll get put on a team, and they get a bunch of cardboard, tape, and
it's
they get
fun. We did it last year.
Yes, it's really fun. And so we wanted to also give them some time this year to really sit down and sketch out their ideas and, try to talk about and learning those, engineering, techniques of how we can kind of build something that's going to be stable. Because I know I saw some kids who, their stuff fell down before the time was up. So we're really trying to, push those things. And one of our big focuses is trying to push, STEM careers too, because we learned in the process of, just working on the museum, we've been told that, if kids don't really get access to those by the time they're, 10, then they're not ever going to consider a career in that. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. How can people help the museum? You mentioned the fundraising campaign. I'm sure that's one way, but how else can people help with Fort Kids?
We can always use a lot of volunteers. So our outreach events, we can always use extra set of hands. And so if you want to come out and help the kids, build their forts, because there are box cutters, and I've heard that kids and box cutters don't mix. And so we need a lot of adults to help out with that, especially with my son.
Yeah. Mine too. Yeah. I was a little nervous.
Yeah. So we can always use volunteers for our outreach events. We had someone, she moved to Fort Smith recently. Her husband had a job with ArcBest, and she just wanted to get plugged in. And that's one thing I think is cool about Fort Smith is, like you said, it's so easy to kind of get plugged in. And she reached out and said, hey, I want to be involved. And she showed up we had an event with Girls Inc., an after school program, a STEM event with ArcBest. And we had a bunch of blocks where they built stuff. And she showed up and, said, hey, I just want to come in. And she was so good with the kids, and it was just really fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you do Fort Kids. You're an attorney, but you also do, we're friends on social media. Yeah. So I see you do like mock trials and stuff.
Yeah. The Southside mock trial team. Yes.
What is that?
Yes. So that's how my husband and I met, was on the mock trial team at the U of A. And so, for anybody who doesn't know, mock trial is where students can form teams, and you do a jury trial as you would as an adult attorney, or my coach at the time called it big boy court, but I'd always have to correct him and say, no, it's big girl court.
Yeah.
But before you get to go to big boy or big girl court, you get to kind of try out your skills. And so you do a whole trial. You do opening statements, you direct and cross witnesses, and you get scored. And we have tournaments. And so it was really big at all law schools, but at our school we do a tournament, and we kind of competed in like the NCAA style. So there was a Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four, and all of that. And so William and I both did it. Yeah. And so actually my last year of law school, my partner and I, we were the first all-female team to win that competition.
Way to go.
And so, yeah. And so, so I was really into that. And that's how William and I met, was doing the competition. And so we just have a passion for it. And then we were in Memphis. I don't know if you know Ridgeway High School.
Yes.
Yeah. So we coached at Ridgeway. And so we coached them for a few years and we loved it. It was just fun. And what's really cool about it is just, it blows my mind how, all the talent that teenagers have and how much, they can already show the aptitude for, the careers they're interested in. But at Ridgeway and at Southside, I've said that we have students who are better than a lot of adult lawyers.
Wow.
I think they just need a nudge in the right direction.
Mentorship, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, so we started coaching them this year, and there was a student who he really wanted to be a lawyer. And so he kind of got the initiative going, and that's how we got involved. And now we're like, we just love those kids. They're so smart too. So I'm really proud of them.
Have any of them gone on to pursue careers?
For sure. We had a student at Ridgeway. Her name's Raven. And she was one I'm thinking of when I say she's better than adult lawyers. When she was, 16, and she went on, she also ran track. And so she ran track at Kansas and had a scholarship. And then she did her undergraduate early, so then she could use her scholarship to keep running track and go to law school, which was amazing. Brilliant. And then she went to JAG. Yeah. And so she's an attorney in JAG in the Army branch. And so she's doing that now. And I mean, just, doing awesome. So amazing. Yeah. So I still keep up with our Ridgeway kids on Facebook. And we just started coaching Southside this year. So yeah.
You had mentioned something about being the first all-female team to win that competition. And for me, my aunt's a lawyer, and I've always, whenever I think attorney, I actually think of my aunt, a woman.
That's cool.
But I don't think that's typical.
Yeah.
So what's it like for you to be in the male-dominated field like law?
A lot of times when I've gone to court, people think I'm the court reporter, and it's gotten better, especially though when I first started. When I, make phone calls, sometimes I get told, well, hey, can you let the attorney know this? And I said, actually, I am the attorney.
Yeah.
I'm just getting a t-shirt that says that.
It's me. Yeah. I'm the attorney. Yes. It's me.
Exactly. But yeah, it's, I think there's a lot of frustration in the beginning. I think it's gotten better. I think maybe we're evolving as a society as well. And there are just more women, over time. I graduated law school 15 years ago. Yeah. And I would say there's been big changes, and I would say it's improved a lot in 15 years. But, I was in Memphis, and that was my first job. And, the big Shelby County Courthouse that's in the John Grisham movies.
901.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And you'd go there. And I think there's probably a lot of, at the time I experienced, attorneys thinking that maybe they can kind of exert a little more, power over you and intimidation. And what I've had to kind of learn over the years is not to, I guess, kowtow to that and to stand up for myself. But, you have to learn that. And it helps for sure. I think I'm really into mentorship because I had mentors that, really taught me you don't have to take that. I remember having an attorney, and this was in Memphis, so it's not anybody in the Fort Smith area, but, kind of be really dismissive. And I remember looking over, and he turned over and rolled his eyes and said, no, if you're going to do that, you need to look me in the face. And that's when I was like, okay, I can do this and I can stand up for myself, and I'm not going to die. No one's going to get hurt. I can stand up for myself, and it's going to be okay. But
did you find that when you did that those people tended to back down?
For sure. I think more of a respect too.
I can't get away. Boundary made.
Mm-hmm.
I can't get away with that with her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I just think it's great because, in high school, I feel like there's so much pressure on kids to figure out what they want to be. And I felt that pressure because I did not know what I wanted to do. And I knew I liked theater, and I knew I liked, communicating. So I was like, oh, communications.
Right.
And then I thought, what the heck am I going to do?
Yeah.
How am I going to make a living? What my job? What will it be?
But here you are communicating.
But here I am communicating. Yes. And it was a windy path to get here. But I think having these programs like mock trial, it's such a great way for high school kids to explore what they're interested in that could lead to a lucrative, successful career. And without these things, I feel like, at least I personally felt, and this was a long time ago when I was in high school, but I felt like I was just kind of aimlessly floating, like, oh, well, I could do this or I could do this, but what am I really good at? And what would a job in this field look like?
Yeah.
And
we have a student. She's at Southside now, and she's graduating this spring. Her name's Sophia, but she moved here from another country, and she just learned English, she told me, in middle school. And then here she was an attorney on our mock trial team, which we have different layers. Not everyone gets to be an attorney. Some play witnesses, some are timekeepers until they can kind of learn. But she was an attorney, and she kicked butt. She's really good, and she learned English in middle school. And she told me, she doesn't, similar to me growing up, I had nobody in my family in the legal world. And, she expressed to me that she realized, I think I could do this. And I said, sister, you absolutely can. And so she's going to go to Fayetteville in the fall. And so I told her, you got to check out the law school and all of that. So
it's like without that connection, I mean, she may not have ever reached that conclusion, or it may have taken her much longer to find that path, and I just think it's great. And especially in like a male dominated field, to have a female mentor at such a young age is so powerful and impactful.
Makes it a real possibility.
Right. Yeah. And then to start learning these things like, you can stand up for yourself. And here's how you can do that in a way that's like professional and is not going to, I don't know what the word is.
Yeah, that's valuable
damage relationships
in any field you go into, I would think. So,
what I like about the mock trial program too, is that the kids at Southside, they got to go to federal court in Little Rock for the state tournament, and they did opening statements, closing arguments, they cross-examined witnesses in the federal courthouse. And I didn't walk onto the stage of a courtroom until I was already a licensed attorney. So I had, didn't get that. And I got to do it, through the mock trial team. You get to be in real, so when we do our competitions, they're in real courthouses. And I think making it accessible to kids, because not just the law, but maybe the medical profession. And I think the Fort Smith Schools now has that program at Darby where kids can kind of go on that medical track, and then they go into a hospital, they go into a clinic, and they can see it in practicality. And maybe they go into it and say, that's not for me. Or maybe they say, man, I love this. Yeah, and that's what I did.
That's money saved for the parents.
Exactly. But I think every yes and every no is a step forward in some direction, right? And I totally agree that putting them in a venue that's a legitimate, real venue instead of just like, let's play lawyer today. I mean, it gives it this weight that's like, whoa, we're in a courthouse and we're doing this thing, and this could be me professionally in this setting. It gives it gives it a weight and a reality, I think, that they wouldn't have otherwise with that experience.
Yeah, you don't know unless I think you see it and you touch it.
Yeah.
Because I remember doing mock trial and then going to watch attorneys in court when I was just a law clerk. And I just remember not going through life and thinking, I don't know what I want to do. But then I sat there and I watched them, argue a case, to a jury. And I thought, man, I want to do that so bad.
So, and I remember in high school, I had an anatomy and physiology teacher who was a registered nurse, and she still was a nurse, but she taught part-time. And she told us, she's like, I am going to treat you guys as juniors and seniors. I'm going to treat you and teach you as if you are nursing students. And that just elevated everything for us. And she spoke with us like we were adults, and she treated us as if we were, professionals in some way, and I think like having that type of a relationship with somebody who's in an educational leader in your life is really valuable. Like you are a professional in the field. Like she was a professional in the field, and you're speaking to these kids as if they are, adults almost. And that's like really, I think, powerful for teens in high school. For sure. Kind of took a winding path there.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's okay. So you obviously have a lot going on.
Yeah.
How do you juggle all
No
that?
idea.
Yeah, you have a family, you've got 2 young kids, a career, volunteer work, like.
But I feel like, and I'm asking this from a place of knowing you a little bit. You do a good job of balancing things out, where you take intentional family trips and stuff like that. So how do you just schedule really well, or what?
I guess so.
What's
That's
your
what sometimes
secrets?
Yeah.
Tell
I
us.
don't know. I'll be honest. I have no idea.
Yeah.
No, I think trying to decide, what are my priorities. I can easily fall into that trap of wanting to do too much.
Yeah.
I know you guys are probably similar in this regards. We're not good at sitting on our hands, and we're just the type of people. It's like, hey, there's stuff out there that can be done, and I think I can do something and be a part of this. And let's build a children's museum. Let's coach the mock trial team. There's so many things that I want to do in the community, and it is hard to kind of narrow it down. I'm having to be, I guess it's a work in progress for myself of trying to be better about, being realistic with my time. I'm not going to say I do not have it figured out and I'm not doing it well. So I'm just going to admit that right now. But I've been trying to, really do a better job about that of, because I think if you're spread too thin, then you're not really doing a good job. That's what I kind of found myself of being spread too thin. So, because obviously I want to be involved in our kids' school. There's so many things I want to do. And unfortunately we can't do it all. I'm like, if only there are more than 24 hours in a day, that's the only thing. I was like, if I could just,
and if we didn't have to sleep, and if we didn't have to,
or if we had the thing in Harry Potter that Hermione had.
Time thing.
Yeah, I'm a Harry Potter fan.
Me too.
If I could just stop time for a minute,
Yes.
But yeah.
And what about for fun? I mean, what do you guys do as a family? What do you like to do around town and to relax and make sure that you're maintaining that balance and not burning out and spreading too thin?
Yeah, I like spending time with my kids and spending time with our, my family. And there are a lot of things to do around here. We really like, finding the trails. There's so many, good walking trails, and you got the nature center, the riverfront. We like to do that a lot together. I grew up riding horses, and we have horses at our house. Now they're older. They're, from when I was growing up, so they're kind of retired. But I like to try to find, ways to ride horses. My son's been have you guys been out to Packard Point Ranch?
Yes.
It's incredible. If you haven't been out there, it's just amazing.
Where is that?
It's not far from downtown, but I would say technically Muldrow, but it's kind of on that,
across the bridge.
It feels like it's outside of town.
It feels like you're in the English countryside, and it sits up on a hill and is the most beautiful view of downtown. But I say that you can schedule to go on a trail ride. You can do they'll do little dinners, and so you can go out there and ride horses. And so my son takes lessons there. Because I grew up just being thrown on a horse, and I never learned formal way to ride, and so I wanted him to learn how to ride better than I did, and so he's been taking lessons there for a couple years now, and he actually has a lesson this evening over there. And so sometimes if I have the time, I'll say, hey, can I ride too? while he's riding. So
I definitely
I love being around horses, and we have senior horses at my house, and so I just like taking care of them. And and I really feel like I don't have a lot of free time, but if I do, I don't really have a lot of free time, so never mind. So
that's great. Yeah. Well, Ashleigh, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been so fun.
Thank you for having me. This was really fun.
Yeah, I'd like to get to know you and what you do and your involvement in the community. And thanks for being on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me over.